So, what are we doing today? What's this all about? Um, well, today's conversation, we are looking at movement lessons, right? One of the things that we've been talking about in this space, in the cohort space, in the convening space, is about liberation and equity, and how it is that we are embodying that as a program, how we are helping you all to embody that as movement makers, but also in your lives, right? In your communities and in your relationships. And we know that it is Pride Month. And so we did want to center something around Pride and really want to make clear that this conversation we're having today is one that is had and needs to be had all throughout the year, right? That this is not just a Pride specific conversation, or this is not the only month to have this conversation. That exploring the intersections of queer and trans liberation and leadership as it relates to the anti-violence movement is literally a 24/7, 365 conversation. But we are grateful today to have it here and in this space, and to kick it off in this way, because we know how important it is. And so today, Maura Bairley, who you all know, right, as facilitator of facilitators, is going to provide some framing as a movement elder who has worked both in queer liberation and anti-violence work, and who has a lot of knowledge and wisdom to provide some framing around like why this conversation is even important to have, right? And to have in this particular way. And then your fellow movement makers, Imara Jones, is going to moderate a little intimate discussion between Daroneshia Duncan-Boyd, who is the executive director of Take Birmingham, and Gia Loving, who is in a directorship role at GSA Network. And of course, you know, Imara is interviewer extraordinaire with Trans/Media. So who better to moderate this conversation than her? And we're just so grateful. And while we're going to start off that way, please, please, please know that you are all invited into the space and into the conversation. So if you would like to share questions in the chat, if you want to come off mute because something just like resonated so well in your spirit that you just need to vocalize it, that is all welcome here. This conversation is being recorded because we believe it is so important, and we would like to be able to share it with the wider community at another time. So thank y'all. Without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Maura.
Hey y'all, happy Pride. Happy Pride, happy Pride. It's so good to be with you. And I don't know what your June feels like, but I have to say this June feels like Pride. It feels like busyness. It feels like, you know, what event is it today? What conversation are we in? So I know I can feel that in my own body, that feeling of rush and busyness and the excitement of going from event to event, and also the exhaustion, the deep exhaustion and some of the habit in that space that can feel like a disconnection and not actually an invitation to drop into a real embodied knowing of what this season of Pride, celebration, resistance, revolution is and can be for us. I feel so proud to be conversant in this circle, and also want to say I feel really proud and humbled to be named as, I'm going to say, a melder in this space. I've been doing this work. I say I grew up in this work. I came into anti-violence movements when I was 20, and I've been doing this work inside of anti-violence movements and at the intersection of Black feminist rape crisis work and BIPOC, trans and queer-led anti-violence work for 30 years. I'm slowing way down. I got so excited because that's what Pride feels like. It feels like teaching with us, but actually we're going to slow down and drop in and be together right? I'm getting with it. Thank you, compa Wendelin. I want to just sort of do a very light framing and kind of share a bit about where and how and where I enter this conversation. Really naming pride as a contested space. Sandra Moran, brilliant organizer, leader, compa, that we had the opportunity to connect with in Guatemala, shared this framework about the contested spaces and named that memory, history, land are all spaces that we contest actively. And pride clearly is at the intersection of culture, history, memory, land, et cetera, et cetera. It's literally contested as an active political consideration. There's a real tension, political tension right now about whether pride is a parade, right? Or whether pride is a revolution, whether pride continues to be a riot or a call to action. And we have folks, including seeing folks in the streets last weekend and in Brooklyn, and again, who are really calling us to liberate pride and to take pride back from the neocons and from the liberals who would brand pride as something that's already been accomplished and that's being sold back to us. So this is an active political conversation. As I said, I really entered this doorway through 30 plus years in anti-violence movement. And I feel like I can still feel the moment that I first stepped off of the sidewalk and into the street before I even identified as queer. And that was when in 1993, I was asked to be a legal observer for the first ever Dyke March in New York City, which at the time was one of the largest unpermitted street protests since the Vietnam War in New York City. And I was invited because I had a lot of friends who were lesbians and I thought I seemed like a nice straight girl and would I want to come and with my notebook and help out. And so that feeling is still really in me of stepping off of the sidewalk and into the street, and of saying and feeling like, what is this? Who are these people and how can they be so free? I mean, these people had a giant bed. There was like erotic things that were happening as we were marching down Fifth Avenue. Folks were marching topless, were marching with drums, just a feeling of that space of walking into what Toni Morrison calls the space where the drums make, and feeling that Amazon power. I can still sort of feel it in my body. Also alongside organizing at the same time, right, feeling that my teachers in this work, that my mentors in this work have not been honored, that their contributions to pride and to the strategic intervention of pride as a place of memory and insistence that we will tell our own story, but what had happened and what is still happening, that intervention in culture space, that my mentors and my teachers in that work were not and are still not being really honored. And so there I want to name in particular folks who have been teachers to me in the anti-violence movement, in particular Victoria Cruz and Bairley White, two folks that I was organizing with in the 90s when we were really challenging the idea that the only thing to do if you were queer being harassed was to call the police, and actually remembering that the reason we had to start organizing as queers was because it was the police who were battering us and raping us and trapping us. And so that the idea that we were going to call the people who were abusing us and we were being abused by people who loved us was one that folks thankfully really challenged and really had, I think, the courage to say no and the imagination to say we will build something else. And that something else is still being built, right? Is still being built. Audre Lorde Project was calling in the early 90s for safety outside of the system. The work, the body of work that folks on this call and our other compas like jurisdiction continue to really steward. So that call for creating what we need beyond the police is still there. And still we are in a debate about whether or not police should be marching in uniform inside of Pride. Still we are in debate about what happens about what the response of mainstream white queers taking, who desire, quote, family-friendly Pride events, what their response is when Black queer activists are arrested at Pride, as we were in Columbus, Ohio. So we are still in a really active contention about what Pride is and what we are doing when we say that we're proud. And when we say that we are marching or are we parading. I want to invite us to think that we need both, to go beyond the idea that it's either a march or a parade. I know we need parades, and I've been with young people when they stepped off the sidewalk and into the street for the first time to a crowd of people cheering. And so I know we need parades. And I also know that we do not need anyone's permission to take our streets. And to continue, and we have never needed, nor do we need, anyone's permission to take our streets, that citizen control is a real thing, and that Pride will always continue to be a revolutionary edge and not a parade. So I want to invite us into a conversation between those spaces. Imara, I'm so pleased to be in this conversation with you and warmly welcome you to join me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, you know, I'm excited that we're having this conversation about the intersection of trans and queer liberation, because everyone we're talking to is trans. I'm going to focus on that part of the conversation today, everyone. So I hope that that's okay, although we can, of course, expand it even more when we move into conversation and invite that to take place. And anti-violence, because I think that anti-trans violence and the anti-trans violence movement and trans liberation are actually the same thing. There's not a separation. There's not this dichotomy, that even kind of the structure of the conversation is not, as to a certain degree, is not kind of where we are right now. I think one of the things that I want to do is to contextualize for everyone what the violence is that is taking place right now. And I kind of come into this not only from my own personal experience and the work of Translash, but I'm also on the board of the Anti-Violence Project in New York. So that informs kind of my thinking on this. And I think that, you know, what's really important to remember is that the United States has the largest number of murders of trans people than any other country in the world, except for two, and that's Brazil and Mexico. And the United States is third. And at the heart of that violence, that epidemic of violence against trans women in the United States is, of course, trans women of color, and specifically Black trans women. That 90% of those who are killed are Black and brown, and of those, 75%. So it's overwhelmingly Black trans women who are being murdered, and Black and brown trans people, and people who live at the intersection of being Black and brown. So I want to make sure that we hold all of those complexities at the same time. And we know that violence against trans communities has gotten worse. The violence that I contextualized is also occurring at the same time of other types of violence that are taking place against our community. So one of the things I think is really important is for us to remember that physical violence is usually the manifestation of other types of violence that are taking place. So consequently, this dramatic increase in anti-trans violence that we are seeing corresponds with policy violence and legal violence that also was occurring against our communities. So we know that anti-trans violence has been a mainstay for a long time. As I tell people, we still don't know who killed Marsha P. Johnson, and that happened in 1992. So this idea that trans violence is new is not borne out by the record or by the lived experience. What we're talking about are these, you know, this epidemic, this spasm of violence that we see in these dramatic ways. And we see that there's a dramatic increase beginning in 2016. When the rhetoric changed around our communities. And that's when we see a dramatic rise in hate violence overall. But there was a large uptick in hate violence. And then we began to see the Trump administration begin to target our communities in very specific ways through removing people from the military. I think the thing that's important about the military ban is that that was in itself a type of violence, because it wasn't only preventing people from entering the military, which is tragic. Regardless of how we feel about the military as an institution, what we're talking about is active discrimination. But not only did it prevent people from entering the military, but it forced trans people who were in the military to leave. So there was a witch hunt in the Pentagon to find out who the trans people were that were in the United States military and throw them out. I think that we believe that the number that happened to was between 15 and 20,000 people. And an argument about a loss of healthcare, an argument about equal educational access, equal housing access, and a court fight, of course, over employment discrimination. And what that conversation does is that it gave encouragement to people who wish to do us harm to feel like they could, legitimated those attacks. And so we see that for almost every year that Trump was in office. I think there's one gap, 2018, when it dipped again. But essentially, from the beginning to the end of the Trump administration, you see trans violence reach new heights every year, every year, every year, every year, topped out in 2020. Now, we now have a new administration, which is good. And the rhetoric around this administration, and honestly, a lot of things that they've done policy-wise from what the president can do is dramatically different. And, you know, there's always improvement, but honestly, a massive difference between what was before. But we now have an anti-trans backlash that's happening in the states. So the focus of anti-trans policy and legal violence has moved from the federal government now to the states, to the point where, and Daroneshia can talk about this in great detail, I'm sure, but, you know, where we had 6 anti-trans bills in 2019, we have 127 this year that are pending in over 35 states. And then actually, just as an aside and a plug, me and my team at Translash have been researching the organizations, the people, the money, the politicians, and the religious ideology that are driving this anti-trans backlash. And tomorrow we're launching a new special limited series called The Anti-Trans Hate Machine: A Plot Against Equality, where we actually detail and take people through how this started. And one key way that it started was through anti-Blackness, kind of the intersection of Blackness and transness. But I'm not going to tip that, and this isn't about me, so go listen tomorrow. Maybe we can have a conversation about it later. So 2021, not surprisingly, with this broad-based anti-trans conversation that's happening in 36 states across the country right now, it's not surprising that then 2021 is on track to cap 2020 as the year with the largest number of trans murders on record. So we see this steady rising anti-violence. And I think that the key thing about this is that it underscores that we can't have trans liberation, that is to say, we can't have the liberation of everybody without the end of violence. It is a prerequisite and a guarantor of liberation is the lack of violence, anti-violence is. And one of the ways that we know that this conversation is encouraging this violence, aside from all of the other things, is that when you read many of the cases in which men have murdered trans women, the fascinating thing is that the men don't believe that they've done anything wrong. That is to say, sometimes they'll call the police themselves, or they'll wait for the police themselves, or the police will arrive and they'll say, yeah, I killed, I'm not gonna say what they say, but they admit to killing the person and are like, yeah, I did it. Like, there's not a sense that we're human and that our lives even matter. And that if you read some of the details of our murders, they are gruesome. I mean, we're talking very heinous crimes that are beyond just murder, if there is such a thing as just murder, but they are brutal, and they are sadistic, and they are psychopathic. So there's a level of malevolence that goes into the murder of trans people. It's a particular type of violence. And one last thing I would say about, you know, the contextualization for anti-violence, specifically for some of the parallels between the violence against cis women and the violence against trans women, specifically as it impacts Black trans women, is the following: that overwhelmingly both Black trans and Black cis women are murdered by intimate partners. Black cis women in the United States have the highest rate of intimate partner violence than any other group of women in the country. Native women are just below, and then Latina, and then white. But Black women are murdered overwhelmingly by people that they know, by intimate partners, I should say. And so are trans women. And so there's a way in which the violence against both Black, cis, and trans women are correlated, kind of this intersection that we can speak of. And it's why I always say that Black women will never also be free without freeing trans women, because there's this massive intersection in the way that people see us. And that I think is really an essential part. And the violence is real, and the violence is impactful. And the other thing to remember about violence is that it's the essential tool of patriarchy, right? That the violence is not an accident, that the violence is meant to enforce a very specific structure, and a very specific heterosexual dominant male-centeredness, that the violence is strategic. Even if the individual isn't aware of it, the permissiveness that they get to be able to exact violence against us, to be able to exact violence against women, is a natural product and a natural need of the system. It has to be violent on some level to enforce itself. And so these are some of the major contours and complexities around violence against trans women. And it is why I constantly say that there is not a feminism worthy of the name. There is not a centering of women worthy of the name. There is no possibility that all women will be free without centering the experiences and the needs of trans women, and specifically Black trans women. It is impossible. And I think the faster that we can understand some of that, the better. So those are some of my initial thoughts and facts and conversation for contouring this. I'm so happy to be quiet now, besides asking questions, and to introduce and to invite into this conversation Gia, yay Gia, and also Daroneshia, to you both. So great to talk to you all today. Great. All right. So I am going to start to, Em just came in, so we'll give Em a minute to get situated. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts about the way that violence plays out in our communities and how it reverberates? Daroneshia, what do you think?
Okay, believe it or not, my take on violence, I have to uplift this. This is my belief, and this is something how I have navigated over the past 20 years as a Black trans woman. The violence that I believe that happens to my community, other Black trans women, is being brought upon us because our fellow cisgender sisters doesn't understand our identity and don't believe that we should exist in the world with them. And so it makes it more of a competition. And instead of us being looked at as women, we'd be looked at as being gay men and accusing cis Black men of being attracted to men and being gay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. The funny thing though, I also think that, like, you know, one of the things that we have to hold is that, like, all women are placed in competition with each other. And then on top of that, right, like even Black cis women feel in competition with other Black cis women, kind of the Real Housewives approach to life. And then on top of that, if you add in gender identity and gender, all this other stuff comes out. So thank you for that. Okay, Gia, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the conversation folks already have been bringing. I agree that I think that the Trump administration and the folks that were like under him really just built a foundation where this violence was possible, where we see like so many of these bills be targeted toward trans youth. I think that that's just, like you said, kind of just built the infrastructure. And I also think that's what we're working against. And that's why like the actions that we need the administration to do now isn't really just saying like, yo, like we're down for trans people, but it's like we need to reverse so much bad shit that's like not only just bad at the federal level, but also like the real impacts are the fact that like trans youth are being like, they're at risk of going to foster care if their parents are being reported for for child abuse because they're getting them treated by a doctor. It's like, you know, these very real threats are happening. And now that some bills have been passed, it's like we are, you know, once again, as a trans community, no longer just like fighting the policy level. Now we're having to figure out on the ground level, how are we keeping people alive? How are we going to get hormones past state lines? How are we going to do all this? I'll do all this. So I appreciate that conversation. I'm excited to talk about, like, just once again, like, I think how powerful trans folks are to still survive and to still find ways to exist when everything is telling us that we're not meant to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's very real. I mean, I have spoken to parents in Alabama. I have spoken to doctors in Oklahoma, and they are planning on what to do if they can't get medical care for their kids just because they're trans. You know, this doctor's practice in Oklahoma, they are having a conversation right now. It's very similar to abortion, but they are having questions right now about who has the least to risk by continuing to provide care if a law is passed, and who's willing to go to jail. Like, those are the conversations that are happening right now across the country. Or parents, set of parents I spoke to in Northeast Alabama, they are figuring out where they are going to move if a trans bill passes next year, you know, and where they think is safe. So these conversations are very real.
Exactly. And if I can just add that, I want to underline that. I feel like I want to underline how, like, these new scary situations are happening because of what we're seeing. And like, it's not like you said, it's not like it's new, right? Like, trans people have been figuring out hormones under, like, across state lines and out of the context of the law for, like, forever, you know, before they even gave us hormones, right? So it's like, I think that we're continuing that. I think the scary thing, at least for myself and the folks I'm organizing with and young people I organize with, is that we're used to experiencing hate on a personal level. Now this is being written into law. Now we're seeing like state governments and state officials like formalize this hate, and that's the scary part, where we're seeing this violence just stack up based on what the past administration was able to build.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also what's slightly different as well on top of it is that we're talking about trans adolescents. So it's one thing for, like, trans, you know, for younger trans people, 17, 18, to maybe figure out hormones or older. But what we're talking about are, you know, 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds who have to rely on their parents and the state telling them that they may not be able to get that. And it's placing entire families in crisis. It's not only individuals that already might be in crisis, and is creating a lot of disruption. And what are your thoughts about the intersections of anti-violence and trans liberation and trans work?
So, hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the accommodations made for me to allow me to enter. So I got a lot of thoughts about this. So how much time do I get to respond to this question?
So I would say be thorough, but as brief as you can. How about that? Because the less, like, because it'll just allow us to get through more thoughts and questions. So I want you to express yourself, but do so as brief as makes sense.
Yep. So I think that, you know, the conditions we find ourselves in currently are, and this is not unique to this moment, but certainly presenting in a particular way in this moment, are at the convergence of patriarchal violence, white supremacy, anti-Black violence, and capitalism. And those things have converged in such a way to produce precarious or dangerous living conditions for, I would say, all Black genders, but in particular, I am thinking about Black, trans, GNC, intersex, queer, et cetera, folks. I mentioned that those things are converging because how I think the violence happens is not in a silo, right? Patriarchal violence doesn't happen over here, and then there's capitalist violence over there, and then white supremacist violence over here. Rather, they converge and produce these conditions. And so another way to put this, or really what I'm trying to highlight, is that patriarchal violence happens capitalistically. So violence against women, violence against queer, trans, intersex folks, violence against gender expansive, et cetera, people is profitable. There is value derived from that. There's a material basis for that. It is requisite. It is required to allow the capitalist machine to function. And so the reason for this, just very quickly to say, is because, right, there's this whole aspect of how capitalism requires patriarchy in order to continue to happen. So the capitalism can't function without workers. So patriarchy jumps in a situation and say, all right, we're going to produce genders that require reproduction in particular ways of families that therefore produce workers. So us being queer, trans, intersex folks, we are people who directly challenge that by our very existence. We are breachers. We are defiant. We are outside of it. We are, to use C. L. Riley Stone's term, we are in the swamp. And so our very existence directly confronts capitalism. And we know what happens when we confront capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy. It produces violence. It seeks to kill us. And when we think about what makes our community most vulnerable, when we think about materially what's happening in our lives, we are without the essentials to provide for ourselves because we've breached those conditions, right? We're often kicked out of our homes, so we no longer have the shelter and protection of family units, which are supposed to provide for us, right, according to this logic. But because we don't fit in it, we get pushed out. So we end up without shelter. We end up without medical care. We end up without food. We end up without a lot of basic things that human beings need, that we need as people, that put us in vulnerable and precarious situations. And then when the violence happens to us, it is often seen as corrective. It is often seen as society resetting itself, as cultures cleansing themselves, as things recalibrating, and therefore not seen as Imara pointed out, as seen as sadistic, seen as heinous, seen as the terrible violence that it is. It is rather seen as an act to correct the balance. So I think about, if we're going to disrupt this violence, we cannot do that by trying to intervene in culture alone. We have to disrupt the material basis for this violence. We have to disrupt the thing that gets profit from this violence. We have to stop capitalism. We have to stop capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy. If we don't stop profit being derived from how patriarchy devalues us, from how patriarchy constructs gender, how patriarchy is on our body and assigns sex to us and boxes us in and tells us we're this thing when we're really not, a ... we can never really get to the root of solving it, which is why, despite our many efforts to do incredible cultural organizing and work, despite a proliferation or a visibility of trans people, of gender nonconforming people, the use of pronouns, and many other really important cultural interventions, we still see the rates of violence against Black trans women in particular to be the same, if not increasing, because capitalism and its powers are increasing. So I know I went a completely different direction, but when I think about how we approach violence, we cannot do it by cultural interventions alone. And the last thing that I'll say very quickly is, inside of this construct, transgender, nonconforming, intersex identities are not the only ones targeted, so are women's identities. And because of that, I think that, I as a non-woman woman, right, I identify as gender nonconforming, see and know that to be read, how can I put this in a succinct way? With this analysis, it leads me to understand that the solving of trans women's murders, Black trans women's murders, trans women's murders in general, will not end just by the recognition of their women identity, because women is a abused identity. Women is a oppressed identity. Women is a violent identity. And so Black trans women face violence in two ways: the violence in not being read woman, and then the violence of being read woman. So you run the risk of experiencing violence, the same violence I'll stop there, but it's a concentration of violence both a violence of not being read a woman, simultaneously also experiencing the type of violence that women experience by way of patriarchy. So it is an extremely dangerous position and a targeted position. We have to do everything we can to fight for the lives of Black trans women.
Thank you. So I'm going to press you on something, and then I'm going to come to you, Daroneshia, with a totally different question. But I want to press you on something. So you're identifying capitalism as a root cause in anti-trans violence, and I'm wondering, like I love, for something to be true, it has to be true in a whole bunch of ways. So is it your belief that if capitalism were to disappear tomorrow, that anti-trans violence would also end?
Capitalism, and I tried to make this clear at the start of my remarks, is capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy act as combined forces. So capitalism cannot do its work without the construction of gender and wealth being extracted from creating and structuring gender and gender relationships and sexual orientation in particular ways. So I don't think you can destroy capitalism without destroying patriarchy. I don't think you can just be like, we're gonna get rid of capitalism and keep patriarchy, and it'll be, you can't destroy capitalism without destroying white supremacy. So if you destroy all of them, yes, I do think.
Right. And I think that for me, where I am in your triad of where, if I had to pick a place to start, I would pick with patriarchy, because patriarchy predated capitalism. Before we had capitalist societies, we had patriarchal ones. A patriarchal society, which springs to me as being one that's patriarchal and very anti-woman and extremely violent, is ancient Rome. It was a patriarchal society. It was not a capitalist society. And so I would personally target patriarchy as the linchpin for the thing that really needs to change. And of course, capitalism is in patriarchal wake. And so the way that capitalism functions for us is through patriarchal systems. But I think patriarchy is a huge issue. But yes, they all work together, and they all feed off of each other in order to perpetuate these systems. Daroneshia, so I'm wondering for you, I thought you brought up a really important point. And one question I have for you is, what do you think needs to change? What would you encourage the change amongst cis women to be able to stand alongside trans women in fighting violence? And it can be anything. It's either some personal things that need to change or institutional. Like, you brought up a really important point, and what do you think they need to get, and what do they need to change?
So I want to share with y'all, I'm a part of an advisory committee. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I was part of multiple ones, but I think the Cricket Island, and no, this one I did through the Miss Foundation. So this was I just thought about it, the Miss Foundation. So I came into the advisory committee to help trying to change some languages and do some different things with Miss. The person that was actually facilitating the advisory group came from some type of institution where they believed in like doing experiments. And of course, this was my experiment. So I had the opportunity to take cisgender Black women with us on a retreat, as well as Black transgender women. And so in findings, I found that we are segregated because we don't communicate with one another, and we see each other on two different sides of the spectrum. As I was biological. This is quote unquote what was being said throughout the retreat. I was born biological female, and you're trying to grow into a female, or somebody is trying to train you or transition you into a female. So I think it's the language, that you wasn't born biological female, you was born sex, as female. You grew into your womanhood, you navigated into what that may look like. Right. So I think we have to challenge people on the language that we use. And another thing that they were saying real, and I was like, no, we shouldn't say real, because who defines a real woman? What does a real woman look like? And it's all type of women in the world. So if God in this created us as women, and we got all different type of looks, we don't know what a woman should look like outside of what our genitalia look like, having a vagina. So does that define you as a woman? And one of the ladies say, oh yes, that does. And I say, so what happens to the women that can't bear children? Does that challenge their womanhood? Does that make them less? Oh, well, you know what, Daroneshia, I never thought about that. So this is a problem. So what's happening is we're closed-minded, we're not communicating, we're using the wrong language. And just because that you perceive us as being born male at birth, that doesn't mean that we navigated through life as men and went into our manhood. So what makes you so angry to tell guys that are out to date us or people that are interested in us that we're men? How could you prove that? Have you ever been to bed with one of us and it's like, oh yeah, you sure right, Daroneshia, that show makes a lot of sense. So why did I have to help you make a lot of sense when these are some of the questions and things you should have been thinking about? But instead of looking at us as a competitor, and even much another lady told me in conversation that her biggest problem with trans women was that we wanted to be too perfect. And I said, help me understand that. She said, oh, y'all have lashes on, y'all have makeup, y'all have bundles. And I'm like, no, that's not too perfect. That's just taking pride in ourselves, what we see. And if we want to add these additional enhancements to our beauty, because this is what it is, it's just bringing out beauty. Oh yeah, you're right, I didn't look at it like that. I thought that y'all was just doing it to attract people. And I told her, well, honey, I can go out daily, honey, no lashes, honey, no makeup, and still attract folks. So if that's the case, I don't think that's the reason why we're just fanning and working with our internal beauty. I said, well, have you ever thought about what does beauty look like to you? What brings you joy? And she said, well, I was with a man that told me that, I shouldn't wear makeup. He likes natural women. Okay, so you're dealing with some trauma. That's what's going on with you. You need to work on that with yourself. And that's the reason why you have this anger towards trans women, because you feel that if we're pretty, we're dressed, we're to the nines, we makeup, all these other things, it makes you feel like that we're trying to attract somebody or attract your man. And that's not fair to us. Like educate yourself. Know that trans, it starts within the man. Like our identities come from within outward. Like our identities don't come from gender expression, because this is what you're talking about, honey. This can be anybody. Just because someone dressed feminine, put on feminine clothes, put on makeup, that doesn't make them a woman. Like, let's educate ourselves. So I just think that it's the lack of education and using the wrong terminology is what's really causing so much division between us two.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things that strike me, I think really, really quickly on my behalf. One is that I tell women who, when I have this conversation with cis women and they get into this whole thing, I say, name me one quality that, name me a quality that you think defines a woman, and I can show you a person assigned female at birth that doesn't match that. Right? Like, do all women have uteruses? No. Do all women give birth? No. Do all women have the same type of periods? No. Do all women only have vagina? What about intersex? No. Like once you break it down, and it's actually why the person who created the gender test for the Olympics has begged them to stop using it, because he's like, I was wrong when I created this test. There's no surefire way biologically to tell that fits all women, that defines what a woman is. It doesn't exist. And so everything else is made up, I think, along these ideas of like patriarchy, because patriarchy cares whether or not women have children. Do you understand what I mean? Like that's a patriarchal notion, reproduction and reducing people to reproduction and defining people as to how they can produce. That has nothing to do with like womanhood, which can be so. And what about, women who are mothers and gone through menopause, are they not women anymore? Like if you take the logic all the way,
Right.
then you can take, we can become very small in the way that we think about these things. And I don't think that the problem is that we don't question these assumptions enough, and they get in the way of solidarity. And I think that that's what you're experiencing. And I don't know how you made it out of there without, I don't know how you made it out of that retreat without committing a crime. But what were you gonna say? I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it.
And then at the end of all of it, if you look at it, that we had more similarities than differences. And that, this is one I got to flag, that the most interesting thing that I learned from Black cis women is that many of them that was a part of the retreat had experienced trauma and rejection from their parents. And I said, oh my God, I never thought about that. So y'all taught me something different, to look at it from a different lens, like you had to be the better child. Or if you was the light-skinned, one lady was like, she was light-skinned and everybody else was dark-skinned. So she was treated different. And she was looked at as the black sheep, and just how the family structure was. And then I was telling them, like, see, this is the trauma. Like, a lot of us are rejected from our families too. So I think if we can get together and talk about this and know that we have more similarities than differences, that I think that we can all be on one accord, you know. And I'm just really hoping so. So of course I got some more sessions that I have to play out with my experiment. So I'm looking forward to challenge it, you know, and hopefully to look at it from a different lens. We had, it was one lady that was very interesting. She removed me off Facebook. She blocked me once she got back. She basically just like, it was wild, but we can talk about that some other time.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's lots to talk about here, and I am being told to ask one more question, which I am going to, but I'm gonna go back to Maura for a minute, and then I'm gonna come to you, Gia, and then we'll wrap. So given your experience, I'm curious as to, and like some of the things that you're hearing, I'm curious as to what you think some of the mistakes were in the larger anti-violence movement and larger LGBTQ movement around sort of trans exclusion and this conversation. Like, what have you been able to observe over the past 20 or 30 years? Have been 20 years, I've been able to like see what are some of the pivotal mistakes and the things that people who've led these movements, because where we are is also a result of the choices that other leaders have made, right, about whether or not to address these issues. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. I feel like my mind is being flooded by mistakes. So let me just see if I can, you know, think about a few. I mean, I think the first thing that I will think about is I think about the complexity about hate crimes and hate crimes legislation, and what happens and for me, this is happening in the 90s in New York City. That's the part that I'm familiar with. This is happening at different times all over. So like we're in the territory of the Matthew Shepard, James Byrd Hate Crimes Act, and conversations at the local, you know, city, state, and federal levels about enhanced penalties for hate crimes. So you have, you know, some queers and certainly the mainstream organizations which are led by white queer men who have a particular interest in what they perceive as safety on the street for economically privileged white queer men. So there's a particular construct of what safety looks like, and that safety looks like what safety looks like for white gay men. And so I'm thinking that there's a strategy about enhanced penalties that would somehow be preventative. Now, there's no evidence that enhanced penalties are actually preventative around any crime, but there's still a fantasy about it that I think is really rooted in a carceral imagination and an inability to imagine anything more than like, we send people to jail for 200 years and 300 years and 500 years, then they won't do these things. So I think enhanced penalties are really a problem. It creates all sorts of rifts inside of movements and organizations, including those of us saying, hey, I don't want to be, you know, in bed with the police any more than we already are. We actually need to divorce the criminal punishment system, not go get farther into bed with it with these enhanced penalties. So that's really one for me. For me, that really parallels with organizations. You know, in Imara, you named AVP, which is where I come up as a community organizer in the 90s. So I think it really parallels the trajectory of organizations like AVP that are making really important and challenging political calculations about how to have greater impact, and are really making choices about being grassroots, community-led organizations that are perceived as being outside of the political mainstream and having really limited political power, or making deals with mayors like Mayor Giuliani to sit on task forces and to, you know, perhaps receive more recognition, a seat at the table, you know, the idea of influence. So I think those political calculations are being made. I disagree strongly with where those calculations got made and still get made, but I think that's a real wrestling that's happening. I mean, I think obviously we have to name on the federal level the decision to focus on marriage as the cornerstone of an equality, of like the architecture of equality, which is, you know, absolutely really, in my view, incredibly limited. And we know it was literally a decision that was made by fewer than 20 white men in a room who are making a decision about funding and what they want to fund that they perceive as winnable. So it's literally like, you know, and then we have to live for the next 15 years inside of their imagination and what they created. Again, you know, BIPOC trans activists, radicals, folks with radical analysis, our Marxist siblings, right? We're all saying this is not what we need. Marriage is not it. Let's not load our human rights onto our relationships. We want a different relationship with the state. We don't want our relationship status to mitigate our status as citizens. And ultimately, that was a strategic calculation that was made. So those are three, I think, I'm going to call them real mistakes. I mean, I think just to name the fallout of the so-called sex wars, and I think the inability of folks to really, I'm going to frame this as a leadership development issue, because this is how I see it. I think the inability of folks to have really principled, courageous conversations about the differences, the political differences that pull us apart, enable those differences to be really leveraged and get played against us. And for me, I think the inability of inside of our movements to make meaningful progress around really following the leadership of sex workers and evolving a lens around sex work is, for me, is a huge failure in our movement. I think we've failed at really like digging in and being able to have new and different and more courageous conversations with each other about those kinds of issues. So those are 4 areas of mistake for me.
Got it. Thank you for that. So let's end everyone on hope. That is to say, what we think will actually change the situation, what will actually allow us to live in a world of anti-violence. And so, Gia, I'm going to start with you, and I'm wondering if you have experiences with the young people that you work with that give you specific hope or specific encouragement. Not only what everyone says is that, oh, they're young, and so things will be different in 20 or 30 years. Like, let's not do that. Like so understanding that, but like, what are you seeing in them? What are you learning from them? What have they taught you that you're bringing into your work that you think will help shift what we understand and how we practice the anti-violence movement?
That's a good question.
Do you want to take a minute?
No. I'm just, you know, I know, I'm just existing in the moment. I think it's a good question. And I think it's just there's so much in terms of like, how can we show up for young people? Like, how can we like actually like care about young people in the world, right? And I think we can simplify it to come back to like, you know, how do you feel about babies? Like, do you hate babies? Do you like babies, right? And it's like, but the folks who hate babies, it's like, why, right? I bring that up because I think that at the very end of it, like, solidarity with young people really comes down to like, can you like in your mind actually respect like a young person's like body and agency, and actually believe that they like are smart enough or like able enough to make decisions for themselves, right? I think parents deal with this decision or debate in their own minds around like, how ready is my kid to make certain decisions, whatever, and we then like make rules or whatever. I think this is a situation on the grand scheme of things of as a society, how do we see or want to limit young people. And we're seeing that through legislation. We're seeing that through legislation at the top level. But like we're also seeing it just at the way that this is even possible, right? So I think in terms of how folks can show up for young folks, it's really just interrogating our own like positionality with young people and seeing like, are we like anti-young folks? Like,
wait, hey, Gia, they're asking you to slow down and stretch out your words. So
no, I saw that over there, but I was like, I wonder what that is. And then I was looking at you all, because that was helpful. Thank you for the teamwork. In terms of what I was saying, I think that the solidarity, I just want to start it with like, where are we with our actual belief that young people are smart enough to make their own decisions. From there, we start building. From there, we ask them like, what the hell do you want? Like things are happening.
I need you to slow down. Like, so you think that that's slow? I need you to go even slower.
Sure,
so that they can keep up.
No worries. I have 24 years of speech problems that I'm working against. So thanks for the reminders. Yeah, so I think from there we build. We start with like our actual belief that young people are smart enough to have their own power. Then we ask them questions. We just released a zine that was kind of like a report back to our community about what young trans people in particular saw, felt, and learned throughout the last legislative session, right? Like watching 150 anti-trans bills be passed or be introduced around the nation. So I think things like that are just like where we start. I think there's a lot of conversations around like, bringing folks to the table and everything. And I think oftentimes that like solidarity, like it makes sense. Like people are like, oh yes, I'll bring folks to the table and then like we'll be in conversation. Oftentimes when young folks are being brought to the table, like, they're brought to the table and then they're kind of expected to just sit there, right? They're expected to just like not ask questions that they need in order to like learn and then contribute to the conversation. Because that work, that foundational building is seen as like, we don't have time for that. It's not important enough to be an actual like problem-solving conversation. But that's the problem-solving conversation. Like that's where the magic happens, is actually supporting folks and building folks up so they can like be like active participants in our strategy conversation. So I hope that wasn't too much of a runaround, but I just think that like there are so many ways that folks can show up. In that zine I mentioned, we literally have like tear out sheets in terms of like all the ways that you can show up for trans youth. But I think at the very root of it, I'm realizing just like how shitty like adults have been in order to create a world where like the US government is targeting trans youth and like criminalizing our healthcare in like year 2 of a pandemic, and no one is batting an eye. Like other than us, queers are barely batting an eye, right? Like no one even knows what's happening. And that's not also to blame us. Like the government is made that way. Like this is confusing as hell, even for me. I'm trying to control everything, right? Or like understand it. So I think it's all just a mess, but I feel at the root of it, I'm just trying to pursue like an agenda of like actually like loving the young folks I work with and actually being like, how can I keep you alive? How can I keep you fighting for your own liberation? And I think that like partnership work has been magic, at least for me, and like remaining connected. And I really want to invite other folks to like be in that partnership at the really authentic level, because if it's not authentic, then it's like, girl, we don't have time. We don't have time for that, because like literally like our healthcare is being criminalized, right? At the same time that I want to play softball, which is also very important. It's all important. I'll share that.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you
the
so
reminder
much.
to slow down, by the way.
Thank you so much. Em, what do you think, and what is giving you hope for how we can end violence against trans and gender nonconforming, non-binary people?
I think the moment is ripe for a new feminist movement to be built. I think that, we've been flirting with it for quite some time. It's been bumped up against for quite some time. And I think we have the right ingredients and context and conditions for that to happen. And the feminist movement that I am interested in will have many different genders inside of it. And no one anybody's savior, but folks are shoulder to shoulder in the direct confrontation and destruction of capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. It will be one where there will not be false solidarity. It won't be just emotional recognition or empathy. Though that's important, it's not going to be based on, we're not going to measure our movement based on how many people like us or don't like us. Who gives a fuck? We're going to base our movement and our success on our ability to then control our lives, live fully in our autonomy and our collective self-determination. And so, when, you know, the feminist movement that I'm interested in being a part of, and I'm thinking about folks like, thinking about the learnings I've had from people like, you know, studying Audre Lorde and Asada and many others who are unnamed, or just folks inside of my life who were radical Black folks who were socialists, clearly anti-capitalist. And I emphasize capitalism here, not because I think it is the only thing to be destroyed, but it's the one that we talk the least about in our movement, in the anti-violence movement. As someone who's been in it for 13 years, it is the thing least talked about. And until we begin to confront it, we can't actually undo patriarchy. We can't actually undo some of these other things. But that is what I think it is time for: a new feminist movement, one that is multi-generational, multi-sectoral, that invites people in, holds people in, helps people transform and become different along the way. One that is designed for people to be shoulder to shoulder. One that is inherently pro-intersex, pro-trans, pro-queer, pro-woman, pro-disability, pro-immigration, ... I think that is the way we have to do it. We can't do any of these things, I think, without a radical, grassroots-led, Black, leftist, queer, trans, etc., new feminist movement. And I think we're on the precipice of one.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Gio wanted to add something really quickly, and so I would encourage you to do that quickly. So, and then we'll just move to questions from the rest of the cohort.
Yeah, no, I'll do it very quickly. I'm reading a cool book. We do this till we're free, and I just read the essay where we talk about like hope as a discipline. And it was really interesting, and I feel like it kind of solidified our last conversation, where I was like, I always felt like ridiculous for saying like I lead with like my heart or whatever, and I felt like it's kind of like not only our last month's conversation in the panel, but I think this essay as like hope as a discipline kind of like gave me like some oomph behind like actually no, like that's powerful shit, and like that's the tool that like actually makes me want to believe that a future is possible. So I'll link I'll put the name of the essay, but I think to your question.
Yeah, if you can put the name of the book and the essay in there. So now we're going to open it up to the rest of the cohort. We invite you to give us your thoughts and or questions and or reflections. A reminder to speak slightly slower than normal so that we can make sure that our interpreters can both keep up and their arms don't get tired too quickly. So we're trying to do two things at once. So please come on in the room, everybody.
Hey y'all, this is Paris. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm outside, so you might hear outside noises, but I really appreciated this conversation. And I think in what you said, I really appreciated those comments. And that's what the work we're doing at Black Feminist Future, because we think it's really important, exactly what you said. All of the context and the work, it's really juicy. This is a very juicy conversation. And I am doing this dance between thinking about the systemic, right? Which is like, we need to break up with patriarchy. And also in all the other systems of oppression, but I'm also thinking about what Daroneshia brought up, which we oftentimes in space don't get to talk a lot about, which is the interpersonal, which is the harm that has happened that keeps us from not being in right relationship with each other. And and it seems like there's a lot of accord that we long for this space where Black trans women, in particular, I'm going to talk about, you know, from my experience in the work I do, Black trans women and Black cis women in particular have authentic conversation, which is like what Em said, it's not about false solidarity, where we can talk about, yes, grounded in patriarchy is a system that creates all of these dynamics and the other systems of oppression as well. But what has been hurtful, what has been harmful, because I think one of the things that's really interesting, right, is that we are navigating and oftentimes having conversation around how patriarchy has both hurt us, right, and pitted us against each other, in very interesting ways. And also there's this real call around how are we accomplices, right? Like, no, not even accomplices, how are we leading the charge to break it with patriarchy? So I love this idea around the experiments. I know the reasons why we don't have deepened conversation is because there's a lot of, every time I'm like, okay, let's have these conversations, let's bring us together. It becomes a lot of trepidation around like, who's gonna hold this? How can we have it? How can we actually talk about this interpersonal space? It feels like a humongous landmine where people feel, I think it's like space around like heartbreak, entitlement, like you hurt me, I hurt you, like up against like two separate walls, that it feels like sometimes it's hard to figure out how do we come together. And it's like, yes, how do we come together around patriarchy, the system, but also how do we acknowledge around how our interpersonal and the internalized stuff has really made it hard for us to be able to be in real solidarity and community with each other. So yeah, I think this is an important space, and that's just what came to my mind.
Thank you for that. That's come up a lot today. Hey, Indira, come on.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
I am dragging a little bit today, but so good to be in community with you all. Like Ty, I so appreciated this conversation. And I guess what came up for me, and would love to just put out in the space. So there's a lot happening. Well, you know, there's always a lot happening in DC, right? But there's a lot happening in DC, particularly around Pride season, but more importantly, our LGBTQI community, particularly our transgender community, has experienced a lot of loss within the last 4 to 6 weeks. And one of our dear BIPOC trans sisters died probably less than a month ago. And she was near and dear to everybody's heart, my heart. She was a friend, a client of ours at the center. And she died of a drug overdose because she got a bad batch of something. And it was interesting that she was connected to multiple organizations in DC. And one of those organizations, quote unquote, and I'll explain more, had her on the payroll. And she was kind of an outreach worker and things like that, but she was still struggling financially. And so there were GoFundMes because she would be trying to get money for medicine and food and things like that. And then when she passed away, Twitter, found out. And so a lot of condolences came out on Twitter, and a lot of people showed up to her services and things like that. And then the conversation kind of took a left turn on Twitter because folks were feeling like if she was connected to an organization that was, quote unquote, paying her, folks felt like they could have done more for her in terms of making sure that her needs were met. And so then a larger conversation has been taking place in the community around these organizations who are claiming to support BIPOC trans folks and, giving them jobs and employment, but are they really doing that? Hence what happened to our dear sister. So it's just been a really interesting conversation because folks were saying, people could have done more for her, the agencies could have done more for her. And then what was so interesting is that the agency that folks were talking about that could have done more for her, they decided to close down for 2 months through August 7th to have a bereavement, to grieve her loss. So there's a lot of feelings around that. So it's been really interesting to be in conversation and community with with our trans folks here in DC around accountability as it relates to the work, as it relates to the movement, as it relates to how organizations are claiming they're showing up for the LGBTQI community. So I'll just leave it at that. But I definitely appreciated this space, appreciated the conversation. I think there's a reckoning to be had, and I think there's a hard conversation to be had, particularly amongst mainstream agencies or just agencies who claim to support and employ trans workers who really don't.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. You know, I also say really briefly, and is one of the interesting things is how there's not one mainstream Black women's organization that has ever said or put out a statement about the murder of Black trans women. Not one, not one. This is also the case amongst certain sororities which admit trans women, AKAs. If you're an AKA, AKAs can be Black trans women. Deltas can be Black trans women. Neither of those organizations, which says that they allow trans women to become sisters, has ever said anything about the epidemic of violence against Black trans women, ever. Kalayo, you would like to share something?
Yeah, thank you, Imara, Maura, Gia, and Daroneshia for just the space that you created for us today, and just really grateful to learn from trans siblings. Yeah, I think for what we've been grappling with in our communities is this level of grief that we're holding because we did lose two really incredible trans leaders in Seattle, Constance Blakely and LL, recently within the last year. And in the context of that grief, we've also been holding the grief of not feeling like, our contributions, and specifically, Black trans women's contributions, like within the movement that they've been leading, that they've been putting so much labor in, has been really acknowledged, has been really honored in the ways that we see kind of everyone else contributions be honored and be held or be uplifted. And there's actually a lot of grief in just sharing space with comrades who don't necessarily see like the intersections or the importance of the work that specifically trans women have been holding in our community for a long time, but I would say even, queer folks and gender nonconforming folks, and not even seeing like those part of our identities as being, really critical to what we contribute to the movement, right? It's just like the labor might get acknowledged, but not like not the importance of our gender and our experiences as why we put in so much for our collective liberation. And so I think, there's just also a need for the acknowledgement and the resources to hold our grief, like these huge like tides of grief that we all have been holding because of all of the violence that trans people are facing across the country, but in the world, and of the, the kind of invisibility that we've been feeling even from our own communities as well.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for everyone who was able to participate in this really incredible conversation. I think that the reason why the time passed so quickly and the reason why we had even more people to want to be able to weigh in is because we don't have this conversation enough. So I am hoping to everyone, an expression of hope, to underscore something Letitia said, that this is not the last conversation that we have about this, and that it only isn't consigned to the month of June. and that we begin to have even deeper conversations, because we're not, as Im was saying, and others, going to have a radical moment in ending violence until we're able to grapple with this essential issue about the violence against trans people, specifically trans women, Black trans women, and our relationship with cis women as a part of that. So thank you all to everyone. Be safe, be well. Thanks to all your fellow panelists. I know that I am done sharing for this month. I'm happy that the month is in, because I'm happy to not share anymore after June 30th. So I appreciate everyone showing up and doing that in a month where we have a tremendous amount of demands on us and our person. So thank you all so much. And I'm going to turn this over to drumroll, Letitia.
This is Letitia. Let's come off mute and give it up. Give it up, give it up, give it up for